Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled The Day Alabama Was Erased from College Football. Imagine waking up tomorrow and Alabama football no longer exists. No Crimson Tide, no Nick Saban dynasty, no national titles, no Alabama recruiting machine, just gone. Now imagine what happens next. Nick Saban suddenly needs a job. Johnny Manziel never plays at Texas A&M. Patrick Mahomes never ends up at Texas Tech. The SEC loses its most dominant program overnight. The Pac-12 becomes the quarterback capital of the sport. And the college football playoff controversy that nearly breaks the sport happens even earlier than it did in real life. Today, we're diving into an alternate history scenario where four programs vanish from the sport overnight: Alabama, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Cincinnati. And once you see the dominoes fall, you may realize this alternate history completely rewrites modern college football. Now let's set the table for the collapse. Our story begins in 2012. In real life, this was the peak of the Alabama dynasty. Under Nick Saban, the Crimson Tide had already won national championships and were recruiting at a historic level. But in this alternate history, everything changes in June of 2012. An NCAA investigation uncovers a massive recruiting and booster scandal spanning multiple programs. Sanctions come down harder than anyone expects. Four programs are permanently dissolved: Alabama, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Cincinnati. And just like that, four programs disappear from college football. Entire rosters suddenly become free agents. Coaches are scrambling for jobs. Conferences are panicking. And the sport enters a level of chaos we have never seen. This is where the alternate history butterfly effect begins. And that sets the table for where Nick Saban goes. When Alabama disappears, the biggest question in college football becomes simple. Where does Nick Saban go? Multiple programs try. Michigan calls, Texas calls, USC calls. But one school moves faster than everyone else: Tennessee. Coming off a disappointing season, the Volunteers make the most aggressive coaching move in modern college football. They hire Nick Saban. And immediately, the balance of power in the SEC adjusts. Because you may be thinking to yourself that Tennessee wouldn't suddenly become a contender overnight. And that's fair. But Saban doesn't just bring coaching, he brings the entire recruiting machine that made Alabama dominant. Within weeks, recruits who are committed to Alabama begin flipping to Tennessee. Suddenly, Knoxville becomes the new recruiting epicenter of the Southeast. The dynasty doesn't dissolve, it moves. And that set the table for the quarterback butterfly effect. The collapse of Texas A&M and Texas Tech creates another massive ripple, because two of the most exciting quarterbacks of the decade suddenly need new homes: Johnny Manziel and Patrick Mahomes. In this alternate history, Johnny Manziel lands at Arizona State. Arizona State suddenly has the most electric quarterback in college football. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes ends up at Washington State playing for Mike Leach, which is honestly the most Mike Leach thing imaginable. And almost immediately, the Pac-12 becomes something completely different. It becomes the quarterback conference. At the same time, you'll have Marcus Mariota at Oregon, Johnny Manziel at Arizona State, Patrick Mahomes at Washington State, and Jared Goff at Cal. Every week has high-scoring games. Pac-12 games start ending with scores like 56 to 52 more often than not. ESPN starts calling the league the quarterback coast. And suddenly, the center of the offensive innovation moves west. And that sets the table for the Texas recruiting. The disappearance of Texas A&M and Texas Tech changes something even larger: the Texas recruiting map, because those two programs controlled massive recruiting territories. When they vanish, the power vacuum is enormous, and several schools rush to fill it. Texas benefits, Oklahoma benefits, TCU benefits. But the biggest winner might surprise you: Baylor. Without Texas A&M competing for recruits and without Texas Tech controlling West Texas pipelines, Baylor suddenly has access to a huge portion of the state. Elite recruits start choosing Waco. Within a few seasons, Baylor transforms from a good Big 12 team into a legitimate national contender. And this is one of the biggest long-term ripple effects in this alternate history, because the disappearance of two programs accidentally creates a new power. And now let's set the table for Tennessee's rise. Because meanwhile in Knoxville, Nick Saban begins building Tennessee into something terrifying. The rebuild happens quickly. In 2012, Tennessee goes 9-3. They're solid, but they're not dominant. But the recruiting classes are already stacked. In 2013, Tennessee wins 10 games. 2014, Tennessee wins the SEC. And suddenly, the Volunteers are back on the national stage. Because you may be thinking to yourself that the SEC would simply replace Alabama with another powerhouse like LSU or Georgia. And those programs do remain strong, but Saban's recruiting operation is simply too powerful. By 2014, Tennessee has the #1 recruiting class in the country. The dynasty machine has fully restarted, just in a different city. And that sets the table for the playoff controversy. Now we reach the moment that breaks the sport. 2015, the college football playoff is still relatively new. The final rankings come out. The 4 teams selected are Tennessee, Baylor, Oregon, and Washington State. But one team is furious: Arizona State. Arizona State finished the season red hot. They beat Oregon earlier in the year, and they finished with a strong record, yet the committee leaves them out. And you may be thinking to yourself that playoff debates are normal, and that's true. But what happens next makes the controversy even bigger. In their New Year's Six bowl game, Arizona wins handily, and they win in a blowout. Meanwhile, Washington State loses its playoff semifinal. Suddenly, the question dominates sports talk shows: did the committee pick the wrong Pac-12 team? Fans argue Arizona State deserved the playoff spot, but the debate becomes national. And that sets the table for the rule change. The fallout is immediate. Conference commissioners demand reform. TV networks push for expansion. Within a year, the NCAA approves a new format. The college football playoff expands to 8 teams, earlier than anyone expected. And all of it can be traced back to the training reaction that started when 4 teams disappeared. This is the final domino in this alternate history. One decision reshaped the SEC, the Pac-12, Texas recruiting, and the playoff itself. So let's recap the butterfly effect. Alabama disappears. Nick Saban rebuilds a dynasty at Tennessee. Johnny Manziel electrifies the Pac-12 at Arizona State. Patrick Mahomes runs the air raid at Washington State. Baylor rises because the Texas recruiting map changes. And the first major college football playoff controversy forces expansion years earlier, all from one moment in this alternate history. Sometimes one change can rewrite an entire sport. And if you enjoyed this alternate college football universe, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which program would benefit the most if Alabama disappeared from college football. You can also check out our other college football alternate history timelines right here on the end screen. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next timeline.